Whoa! Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. Figured that out because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Oh, I have one heck of a show for you. We are very close, very, very close to the holidays. Monday is the Drive to 500 drawing, where one lucky subscriber to the channel will be randomly selected live on the show, and that person will win the jersey of their choice worth up to $175. We're starting the show on time today. I have a meeting that I need to make sure that I'm not late for. So we are right up against it today, my friends. But I have one heck of a show for you. If you are here to hear some takes on Philly sports, you're in the right place. But I will tell you that I am the most excited today for Media Wars. As many of you know, and as the mission statement of this show has long been understood, not only will I talk about Philly sports and national sports, but I will dissect the media that cover them. And I saw some very troubling news the other day. And so I'm going to get into the layoffs that happened at ALLCITY, which unfortunately affected a couple of people locally, affected people in Chicago and Denver and Phoenix. So we're going to get to all that because I think it's important that we kind of pull back the curtain on some of what might have been going on there. And I'm going to give you a little bit of my own personal experience just dealing with that company in negotiations about a year and a half ago. So I bring a little bit of a unique perspective here. I also happen to have open DMs, and I have heard from some people in the last year or so about their experiences working at that company. But layoffs a week before Christmas. Ooh. I mean, now, if you paid attention to the thumbnail, but for those of you who might not have, we're just going to throw this up here real quick. Ebenezer Scrooge. Would I do a thing like that? Would I? Well, but Mr. Scrooge, you did. Oh, we're going to get into it. Now we, of course, have to talk about, we'll get to the Eagles a little bit later on. Eagles preview as they take on the Commies this weekend and in what is not really as much of a massive matchup for the NFC East as it just is on the whole for the NFC. The Lions and the Vikings also looking to keep pace in a very competitive NFC landscape. We will get to all of that later on. The Sixers arena has gotten approved by City Council. We will get to that as well. The Flyers got their doors blown off last night. The intention is to get there as well. Oh, and by the way, the Phillies have answered back. They heard your critiques. They heard your criticism. They heard everyone say, hey, the Mets got Juan Soto. Dave Dombrowski, Temu.com, Mr. Rogers, what did you get for us? And the answer is Max Kepler. We will also try to get to that as well on today's show. First, I'm going to go out to the comments because I love and I cherish each and every one of the people who hop in the comments section on this show. I think they're great people, and most importantly, they are the lifeblood of this show. So I'm going to go out to the comments here really quickly, and then we're going to get underway with some thoughts on the media landscape and on Philly sports. JH checks in with the morning, Russ. Looks like it'll be a spicy show based on the thumbnail. Can we not talk about the Flyers today? We are unfortunately going to have to talk about a 3-game losing streak and them getting their teeth kicked in last night by the Kings. We will. At some point, we'll get there because it was a disastrous performance. One that, they were very much in it into the second period, about to go into the dressing room with a lead, and then Sexy Alexi, Coley the goalie, you choose your preferred nickname for the goalie, whiffs on a shot, can't put his hand on the puck, gives up the lead, and then LA just comes out with plenty of momentum, and they bury the Flyers in the third. We'll get there. Ford with the morning. Also noting that my t-shirt's a little tight, Ford. All right, in your honor, I will take the... No, I'm not doing that. We're not doing that. Not today, Ford. Not ever. Andrew Fawcett with a good morning. JH with the Buc-ee's Nutcracker. I told you guys that I had to bring something on the show. Andrew Fawcett, an absolute delight, a mensch, the mensch of the century, perhaps, lives in Texas. And I said on the show, 2 months ago, I was like, yo, there's this Buc-ee's Nutcracker, and there's no way to get one online. So what did Andrew Fawcett do? He went to a Buc-ee's, and he got me the Buck Cracker. He did. That is top-level fandom, and I greatly appreciate it. So this is the Buck Cracker. It's Bucky. Here's old Bucky. But here he is as a nutcracker. So now he's on the desk. He's been on our mantle since Andrew sent it. It actually brought in the Christmas spirit in our house. So well done, Andrew. Well done. Chris Freed says, Russ, you are in the new media sphere. What are your thoughts on ALLCITY layoffs and its impact on the industry? I promise I'm going to get there. I think I'm actually going to lead the show with the media talk. So I hope that you guys don't mind if I go there first, because I want to make sure that if I get cut off on anything today, I don't want it to be that, because there's a lot of nuance to the topic, and I really want to make sure that I don't rush myself at the end and then something gets misconstrued, because that is not the point of this show. So we'll get there as well. There are some very inappropriate comments going on in the comment section. We're just going to keep those in the comment section. If you're following along over on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel, you can see them, I'm sure. If you're on the Joy Media YouTube account, love you, appreciate you. Head over to the Russ Joy Show channel, subscribe. A reminder to everyone, if you were one of the first 500 people to subscribe to the channel, you're getting 5 entries into Monday's drawing. If you are past 500, you'll get an entry into the drawing. It'll just be one. But remember, it only takes one to win. Now, I do have to point this out. This is an important caveat to the contest. Your subscriptions have to be set to public on your YouTube channel. Now, for many of you, you might not even have a single subscription. You might have only created a subscription to subscribe to this channel. It doesn't have to be today, but I would say by let's say Sunday, set your subscriptions public so I can see your name attached to the YouTube channel and I can add you into the drawing. And then if you want to peace out after that, after Monday's drawing, you want to set them back to private, that's fine. But as of right now, I think it's 150 channels right now I have in a spreadsheet, which means that there are 350 of you that do not have them set to public, so I can't even see your YouTube channel subscriber name. So just do me a favor, set them to public. The only other workaround I can think of is if you wanted to send me a screenshot via DM on Twitter or Facebook, you could send me a screenshot of your channel name and showing that you're subscribed to this. It would be easier to just set it public. If you've been subscribing to channels that you're not proud of, I don't know what to tell you. But I do appreciate you for subscribing to the channel. But I want to make sure everybody gets in the drawing. But as of right now, it's about 150 people instead of 500 because a lot of people haven't set to private. Again, many of you might not have YouTube subscriptions. You might not even know how to do it. I'm not going to walk you through it right now. I Googled it earlier. It's very easy to do. So just make sure that you get yourselves submitted and into the contest. Okay. Ford is actively campaigning. Says that between this and Crossing Broad and the loyalty, he deserves this. He wants the Brandon Graham, Kelly Green jersey. I forget who it was the other day that said they're going to request a Hornets jersey after what happened. So we're going to... I don't know what that means. I don't know. There is all kinds of wild stuff happening. Amy says, my kids and I were at the Flyers game last night, and oof, we'll get there shortly. Dee Dee Skinner says, sup, Russ? What's up, Dee Dee? How you doing? Let's see if there's anything else over here. Andrew Fawcett, great guy. Says you're very welcome. Intern Andrew checks in over on YouTube. It says, can't wait for this about the ALLCITY thing. He got a little bit of a preview last night. He did. He got a little bit of a preview of what I was going to talk about today. He was like, "Oh, how are you going to go about it? How are you going to break it down?" Yeah, don't worry. We're going to start there. Okay? We are going to start with the news that broke. And then we're going to get to the Philly sports, I promise. I'm going to throw out to some of the comments here really quickly to just kind of set the stage. Okay? I want to make it very clear. Let me make it abundantly clear, okay? Because this is important, okay? The things that I'm about to talk about with the ALLCITY layoffs are not against talent, are not against the people who were laid off of their jobs. It is not intended to be in any way, shape, or form a shot at talent who are still employed by the company. And I want to make this very clear. Long ago, years ago, I think it was pretty well known if you were a Flyers fan. Snow the goalie and Broad Street Hockey didn't always get along very well. We kind of lobbed grenades at each other. We were a little bit more direct. They were a little bit more passive. To my knowledge, I think only one person was being full-time employed by a blog or something related to it, covering the Flyers. So, it was fun to have a sort of made up rivalry. And I think it was actually good for both shows. And like, we probably sent each other subscribers, and like, there were some things said back and forth over the years that like weren't great. So I want to be really clear that like that died. Like that entire, in my mind at least, that rivalry, that whatever it was, that died about 1.5 years ago. Why? Because I don't ever want to see somebody lose their job, okay? And when you go from doing a sports thing on the side versus doing it for your job, I then say, I actively do not want to go out of my way to potentially cost you subscribers or to get you in hot water with your employer or whatever, right? So about 1.5 years ago, oh boy, I've already had a conversation with somebody on the side about how much do I pull back a curtain on this. Okay, we're gonna go for the tell you a good amount, but I'm not going to betray the total trust, even though there's no NDA that says I can't talk about what was discussed 1.5 years ago. But we're just to be safe. So ALLCITY is the company, the parent company that owns PHLY. They own a site in Denver, Chicago, Phoenix. They just launched in Dallas. I've heard for a while they're trying to get into Boston, perhaps New York, maybe even Cleveland. I don't know how far any of those are. Over the course of the last couple of years, they've raised a bunch of VC money. They did a Series B round, I think, earlier this year. Andre Iguodala's company, I believe, put around $8 million of venture capital money into that company. It seemed like they were heading in the right direction. Okay, publicly, it seemed like they were heading in the right direction. They were raising a lot of money. They were expanding into more markets. And they're gonna keep doing that. Like, just to be clear, they've given every indication. I'm going to get to a couple of quotes that came from their CEO and also some extra quotes that went to Awful Announcing. But like publicly, they're projecting this image of they are this big innovative company. They're coming to take over the local media sphere. Now, about 1.5 years ago, we were approached, and I say we, Snow the goalie. So it was Anthony and myself. They actually never talked to Bundy, which that was a big part of this isn't going to work. But Ant and I were approached by ALLCITY when they were getting ready to launch in Philadelphia. And we met with their CEO. Now, in the lead up to meeting with them, I did what I typically would do. I did a deep dive into what do I think the future of the company is going to be? What do they do well? What do they not do well? What do we bring to the table that's unique? What do we ultimately need to get out of it for it to make any sense? Now, we sort of broke this down on an episode of Snow the Goalie about 1 year ago, I think. And it was called like where we've been and where we're going, or where we're going and where we've been. And we kind of pulled back the curtain a little bit. I'll just do a little bit more here. So about 1.5 years ago, they approached us. There was, I have to be careful because I think it's public knowledge, but Anthony Gargano, who ended up hosting a show for them, was at least in part offering his thoughts, we'll say. I don't remember what the legal jargon was in the lawsuit between Beasley Media, 97.5, and ALLCITY. So I'll try to, from my recollection, counsel, he maybe was being asked for his feedback on which writers they should go after, which podcasts they should go after. And hockey's a little bit weird. Not every radio personality or writer is going to know which podcast you want to go to. So somebody went to Gargano, said, which hockey podcast do you go after? Gargano apparently reached out to somebody from more of a national lens who understands this market, said Snow the Goalie is the guys to go to, so they came to us. Again, this is not some kind of like victory lap. Oh, they came to us first, but they did. And their CEO, who was like an hour late to our call, which was an immediate just red flag, he told us that we were the number one choice. He wanted to get this across the finish line. I think we had talked to him and had talked to him a couple of times before this meeting. I talked to him, I think the night before, because I said, like, look, before we even have a conversation about like selling the podcast, because that's the whole thing, selling the podcast feed, I need to know like what the salary terms are. I need to make sure that like I'm not taking a pay cut. Like, I'm not taking a pay cut from what I was doing to go and like be a full-time Flyers beat guy. I had no interest in being a Flyers beat guy. That was not I don't think I've ever wanted to be a beat writer. I don't know if anything is ever going to change. I just don't find it that exciting. I don't find it enticing. It's not for me. It's for some people. But for me, it didn't make sense. And so he and I talked. Ant, I think, was happy with like the verbal number that had been exchanged. And so then it came to me. Now, I had a very good feeling that I made too much money doing what I did, and they weren't going to match it at PHLY. I was correct. I never actually got a number from this guy. He was like, well, let's figure out the podcast first. Which, again, second red flag. Well, that was the first red flag. Second was being an hour late and saying, oh, I was stuck in a meeting. You have a phone. It was 2023 after all. Like, you can send a text and say, hey, guys, sorry, I'm running late. Doesn't matter. So we go through this negotiation where they want to buy an RSS feed. So this is me pulling back the curtain, I guess, on like how their model works, at least initially. They don't tend to just build from the ground up because that takes time. That takes a lot of money. That takes marketing dollars. That takes ad spend. So what they do is they go into a market and they offer podcast hosts however much money. Now, I'm going to throw an average out here. This is not necessarily the number that they offered for Snow the goalie. It's not necessarily the offer that they made to the folks at Broad Street Hockey after we turned them down. It's not necessarily the number that they gave to the guys who do Sixers Beat, or I think Berman and Wolf owned the rights to the Birds with Friends show with The Athletic, I think. So like, I'm just going to go with we're going to go with an overall number, kind of taking into account what I perceive the audience numbers to be. Let's say they offered $50,000 per podcast to each pod. And they're doing five teams roughly per market, right? Because they have NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, MLS. Now, obviously, there's no MLS podcast getting $50,000. Again, it's all an average, okay? Maybe this is too high, maybe this is too low. I remember what we were on. I remember what our pushback was. So like, let's say $50,000 per show. So you figure $250,000 gets you an inside track. Who does that get you if you're ALLCITY? It gets you people who are rabid followers. It gets you people who are actively engaged with the creators of the show. It probably gets you an earlier chance to be able to get onto YouTube and grow a YouTube following right away. It maybe gets you the ability to monetize those people as diehards. They're paid tier, kind of like what The Athletic obviously has. And maybe it gets you to get them to become merchandise people, which is not only good for your bottom line, but is also good for a marketing perspective that like people see cool shirts and they say, where'd you get that? Okay. That's what they do. And then they offer salaries, or they maybe offer like a rev share thing. If you bring advertisers, they do different things, right? Different structures. And they pay people differently, obviously. The number one beat person gets X. The second beat person or host or whatever gets Y. And then maybe you have a couple of people who are freelancers or who are brought in on like smaller deals, and they kind of get, okay, so that's how it works. Immediately, like within 10 minutes of our actual call to try to buy Snow the goalie, I was like, I think I muted it at one point. I looked at it and I'm like, there's no fucking way we're doing this. None. Zero. Absolutely not. Again, Ant had a number in his head for himself and he was happy. And I said, I'm not going to shut this down, but like, if you're going to go, we're going to sell the podcast for a lot more money than they want to offer, because like, I effectively know that my time is going to be done, and they haven't even talked to Bundy. So in my mind, I'm like, this is bullshit. This doesn't work. And it felt sleazy. The entire process was kind of like, we'll worry about your contract terms, but let's figure out the price for the podcast feed first. I'm like, that's not how this works. Mm-mm. And by the way, many of you have probably seen this over the years. When you have a show that you subscribe to, and I subscribe to way too many podcasts, you're there most of the time for those hosts. You're not there for the entity. You're there for the people that have somehow made a connection. The 500 plus of you who have subscribed to this YouTube channel. If I like up and left and I got replaced by Bucky tomorrow, well, I mean, you might like Bucky, but I don't know if you're here for Bucky. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. So like there's a whole thing about like, you want to make sure that you bring the talent on. Okay. One of the things that we were told in this meeting was they don't fire people unless for egregious behavior. They don't fire people. And so I did some deep diving. I knew a couple of people in different markets where this company was live. I didn't talk to anyone who worked for ALLCITY in another market, but I talked to people who knew them, worked with at some point with some of the people who were there. And I got a different picture depending on the market. And I got a different picture. But one of the things was, well, they don't fire anybody. And they're trying to take this thing to the moon. And they're trying to be unique. And they're trying to cover 5+ teams. And I said, okay, interesting. Now, The rollout in Philly is what it is. There are very talented people at PHLY. And so once again, I will very briefly say, I am not taking shots at the talent because I think all the people are talented. And I want as many media jobs as possible. And I want these people to make a nice living, be able to support their families, their spouse, their dog, whoever. They like full on neglected having a full-time baseball person who had like gravitas in the market. They very clearly, like in launching Philly, did not understand that the Phillies are a really big deal in Philadelphia, especially when the baseball team is good. Their CEO comes from Colorado, where the Rockies are garbaggio. They don't care. We said, just as a high-level, 30,000-foot view, you need somebody who's going to cover the Phillies. You could have used a Jim Salisbury. You could have used a Matt Gelb. You could have used a Todd Zalecki or someone else, right? They didn't address that. And the people that they had doing the Phillies did the best that they could with what they had. But none of them had the name recognition that like a Zach Berman did, or that a Derek Bodner, or a Kyle Neubeck, or a Charlie O'Connor had. Like they didn't have that. So from Jump Street, I was like, well, they're kind of fucked on the Phillies at least. Like this isn't going to work. And it's not because those people aren't talented. It's because if you're going to launch in a new market, you really do need to have at least one big name person on that beat. They didn't have that. And the people who worked for them did the best they could with what they could. The union side of things, like I was never going to expect them to throw out Boku bucks to go get somebody to be like the top Philadelphia union writer. Because like, what exactly are you going to be able to monetize about union content, right? But they were trying to sell this idea that like they are this unique company. They're going to serve all fans of all sports. And that's what's going to be unique. Now we fast forward, okay? So we turn ALLCITY down. They bring in Broad Street Hockey. Broad Street Hockey, to their credit, very intelligent thing that they did. They maintained the intellectual property of the Broad Street Hockey name, which was masterclass. Legitimately, tip of the cap, very smart. When they wanted to buy Snow the Goalie, they wanted to buy the feed. They wanted to buy, I think, the YouTube channel and the social media accounts. And I think we would have been able to do snowthegoalie.com, but we never would have been able to do a podcast with the name Snow the Goalie. Also, just a weird thing that, like, you want to rebrand all your shows after, like, there's a certain amount of, like, equity that's been built up with the name of the shows. I don't agree with that model, but that's what they do. They think it's, like, good uniform branding. But the Broad Street Hockey people were very smart. They kept their IP. They kept the name of the site. They kept the site. I think they since relaunched their show. And again, this is not a shot. I don't think I listen to a single in-market Philly sports podcast regularly. I don't think I'm subscribed to any. I listen to a lot of pro wrestling shows. I listen to a bunch of shows on The Ringer. I listen to a bunch of food shows and Freakonomics and Reply All and what's the new one? Alex Goldman, who was the other host of Reply All, has it. It was like hyper energized or something. But Alex Goldman has a podcast. So I'm subscribed to a lot of stuff, but I don't listen to a lot of Philly content. So again, that's not a shot. That's just the truth. So we turned them down. They launched in Philly. And the rumblings behind the scene in this market, this is where I'll talk to what I've experienced and heard from people in this market. Media people talk a lot. TV people, radio people, bloggers, writers for big outlets, they all talk. And the consensus was, is this going to work in this market? And I said, what they essentially did was they went and they poached The Athletic of all writers except for Gelb, which makes me think that Gelb was probably locked into a different kind of contract or was on a different timeline than the rest of them. Otherwise, he probably also would have made the jump. So you had that. And I said, they're going to do daily shows on each team. You can love the Eagles and the Sixers and the Flyers and the Phillies. I do not believe that there is a place in most people's brains to be able to keep up with a daily show on each Philly team for an hour per day. You're talking about at least 4 or 5 hours if you like all 5 teams, 3 if it's only 3 of the teams. I think it's a really hard sell. And I said as much. Like, I don't know if that's the way to go, but that's their model. What they have since found, apparently, because they laid a bunch of people off the week before Christmas, is that it's not profitable, and that if the idea is to be profitable, you have to figure out a way to monetize the audience of the lower tier teams on the food chain, which is MLS Interestingly enough, they view baseball as a lower tier sport, and they've made some cuts there. They did make some hockey cuts. It's bold. I'm going to get into like the layoffs themselves. But here's the real problem that you have, okay? ALLCITY tried to sell themselves as being something different. In these layoffs, and taking a look at who was let go and which teams they covered, they are doubling down on football. They are maintaining basketball. They are keeping some hockey. They're keeping the lights on with baseball. Does that sound familiar to anyone? That sounds like virtually every other media outlet in the country. That sounds like sports talk radio. That sounds like most legacy media outlets. That sounds like a lot of blogs. So in fairness, like, I'm not surprised that they figured out that it isn't going to remain profitable across the board. What I am a little bit surprised is the boldness, the brashness, the bad PR hit you're willing to take, that a week before Christmas, you lay off a bunch of people who apparently were also like part of the ground floor of creating a lot of these channels and a lot of these shows. And now those people, assuming that the contract terms were the same as what was proposed to us, they sold their RSS feeds. Their podcasts are gone. They have to rebuild everything. Their YouTube channels that they might have built up at some point are gone. Those people have to rebuild everything. And who the hell knows how much money they got for them when those markets launched a couple of years ago or even longer. So I feel genuinely bad for all of those people. And locally, there were two people that were let go. Renee Washington was one. She did the Phillies and the Union. I think she did a couple of other things for them. JP, who I believe was Gargano's producer, or at least was and was on air with him a good amount on that show, was also let go, was a big Union guy. I think also chipped in on their Flyers stuff. Like, they let him go. Not great optics a week before Christmas. I want to get to the layoffs themselves, and I want to get into what their CEO had to say, because I think that this is honestly the part that is like the most perplexing to me. Like, the thing that I couldn't believe, well, I mean, I could because I met the guy, but like, I couldn't believe the CEO's comments, and I couldn't believe the tweets that he put out and the fact that he thought it was going to help his cause. So we're going to just break it down. I will get to Philly sports a little bit later on. I hope you can, live with me here on this for a little bit. Let's see. Look like the camera froze. I think we're okay. Maybe, maybe not. Are we back? Maybe it's because I tried to load a page that was just too big and beefy. That might have been it. All right, there we go. It was an ad network on this page that for some reason caused the whole thing to break down. Okay. So I want to just show you how this worked out in real time. And I'm going to go over to Awful Announcing, because Awful Announcing are the ones who aggregated all the tweets together. And so I'll give them the tip of the cap on this one. So ALLCITY does these layoffs. And here's just like Awful Announcing kind of putting things together. So here you see somebody from Chicago let go. I believe that person was one of the Cubs writers for Chicago. Mitchell Carroll, who covered the Rapids out on the Denver site, which was their first one. That was their successful one. That was the one that kind of like set the stage. They let go of Greg Boyson here, who covered the Blackhawks. Herb Lawrence, I think, covered the White Sox. Don't hold it against me if I'm wrong. I think. I might be wrong. So they got rid of these people, okay? And there were more. And then there were apparently other people who maybe had local ties. There was a woman whose name now escapes me, who's from Delco, who was like, I already left that place like in the summer. I wasn't part of these layoffs. So you had all these people that are like, oh shit, I just got fired the week before Christmas. That doesn't exactly make you feel warm and fuzzy. That doesn't really feel like you were valued and cared about, because it's the week before Christmas. Who fires their sports staff a week before Christmas? Well, apparently ALLCITY does. And it was not a good look in the least bit. But then it got worse, because the public backlash was, as you would imagine, horrific. Again, you fire people from your company the week before Christmas, it's not going to go well. I want you to see what their CEO had to say, because I can't believe he didn't delete the tweet. Like I would have torn this shit down immediately. He put up a novel on Twitter to respond to the blowback that they were getting on social media for firing people a week before Christmas. And in part, notes that we were forced to make some really tough decisions. Each of these impacted employees have been offered severance, healthcare coverage, and other benefits as part of restructuring. Some may stick around at part-time capacity. The truth is, as we continue to mature, we must make strategic changes in order to scale efficiently. Unfortunately, that means there were important creators who were let go today. And each one of them was very important to us. As much as we like to cover all sports in the exact same manner, the reality is that certain sports command a different scale of audience and advertiser interest at the local level, and we must move our resources to better align with that. It doesn't mean that we'll no longer be covering all teams in a city. They're going to cover them worse, obviously. Like if you're getting rid of the full-time people, the coverage isn't going to be as good. This means a smarter mix of daily shows, short-form content, and tentpole coverage. Ultimately, we believe these changes will create long-term sustainability for our employees. Okay, so that was one thing that he said, which on the surface, just on its own, I went, oh no. Oh no, baby, what is you doing? Like that's not, oh no. Oh no. That's not a good response. That's not a good thing to put out. He also didn't seem to understand that there was going to be blowback and that people were going to piece together that the parent company got rid of people in multiple markets. So then somebody responded to that tweet and said, understand that layoffs happen with businesses, but man, could you not have at least waited until after the holidays? This is where he made a fucking horrible move. This is just awful. Quote tweets it. A lot of people asking this. Of course they're fucking asking it. What? Yeah. People are going to ask, could you have waited until after Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa to let people go? Because it's a pretty shitty thing to do the week before Christmas and Hanukkah. What are we doing? Okay, anyway. A lot of people asking this. Jesus. Okay. A lot of people asking this. Everyone is being paid through January at the least, as well as their health care, their PTO, etc. There is nobody impacted financially over the holidays by this. I'm going to highlight this one just for emphasis. There is nobody impacted financially over the holidays by this. What does that mean exactly? What does that mean? They're not impacted financially. Okay, let's get out of the ivory tower for a second. Just meet people at a human level. Can we do that? Okay, let's just play a little game. All right, Spano. Person got fired. I just brought a bunch of names up there. Person gets fired. Let's say they have a mental health crisis. That's not good. Whether that's financial or not, they're going to have a mental health crisis. That's not good. Let's just say somebody somehow takes it in stride. A week from now, they're sitting with their friends and family on Christmas, or this weekend, they're going to Christmas parties. Hey, how's the job? How are things going? How's the YouTube channel? How's this? How's that? Oh, I got laid off. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Yeah. But it's okay though, because I'm not financially impacted by this. I'm sorry, what? What? Like I live in the real world, right? So these people have probably already booked travel to go visit with family, with friends. They may have bought Christmas presents, Hanukkah presents for their friends and their family. They may have children for whom they provide. Know that there are financial ramifications. You make purchases based on, your income, and you obviously know that anything can happen, but the hope is that you're, going to have a job and that the week before Christmas, you're not going to get laid off. So this mere notion that oh no, nobody's financially impacted. What the fuck? Could you be any more detached from reality? Could you? Could you be any less in lockstep with your talent? Not great. Honestly, so bad. I have no fucking idea what this guy was thinking. Well, I mean, I kind of do. Again, I met this guy. This guy wanted to offer me and Anthony X dollars for our podcast. And I said, give up the IP. What are the terms? Can you give me an actual number on a salary? Okay, no, you're not serious. I'll tell you right now what I said after I met this guy the first time. I think it's the only time I ever actually talked to him. This guy, to me, very clearly wanted to scale this thing, do multiple rounds of funding, get a bunch of VC capital in, sell this grandiose idea that it's something different, and then eventually exit for like 5-6x his return. And like live off of a very healthy amount of money. Then your profile is raised and you could start to become a speaker at conferences and collect a bounty because you're somebody who built this multi-million-dollar company, blah, blah, blah. Guys, I'm sorry, but like, this ain't it. It's not it at all. This is shitty business. This is shitty on a human level. This is not good or okay in any way. There's that old adage about like when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. I happen to be somebody who's willing to give second chances, third chances. Maybe it's because I just try to find the best in people. I genuinely do. But I was not willing after that one call I had with this guy and then the one that I had together with Anthony. I was not willing to do the time of day with this again. Absolutely not. And I feel terrible for all these people that have been laid off. And I genuinely hope that they all land on their feet. And just based on the fact that so many of them helped to build the YouTube channels, to probably build podcast feeds, to have a portfolio of content put together, I hope each and every one of these people lands on their feet. If it were me, if I were working for this company right now, if I were working for ALLCITY, I'd get the resume ready. Not under the idea of, oh, they're going to come for my job next. I'd get the fuck out of there as fast as I could. Because what you're now seeing is there's no longer the ability to say, we are unique, we are different. They are now going for this profitability model, which up until now, presumably they were okay to take a loss. They're going for this profitability model. They are going to what sports talk radio and legacy media outlets do. They're going to prioritize 2 leagues, maybe give some play to a third, and then 2 others are just going to get left by the wayside. That doesn't make you unique. It's not unique anymore. And I will also point out the fact that like daily shows for each sports team doesn't appear to be a good idea. And I'm going to try to bring the article back up. But the CEO, I would encourage people to go read the Awful Announcing quotes, because he gave quotes to Awful Announcing. And one of the things that he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that they might change, or they realize that daily baseball podcasts might not be the most profitable idea. Who'd have thunk it? And then said that apparently like the idea of having baseball shows going through the winter, through the offseason might not be a good idea. And that maybe they don't need to have full-time people year-round covering sport. Like, of course, if profitability's been the whole thing the entire time, then fine. But that's not exactly what we were pitched. That's not, I'm assuming that's not exactly what was pitched to the fine folks who sold their podcast feeds and maybe their YouTube channels. But this is just not good. And it gets worse because they're in the midst of, this is actually where I do wish, let me see if I can pull this up without having my computer melt down. They're about to go through a Series C, my computer's going to shut down if I pull this page up again. Okay, we're just going to back out of it. They're about to go through a Series C funding effort. They're trying to get even more venture capital in through the door. And Series C is kind of like, you've made it. Series A maybe is your like friends and family. You're trying to get a startup going. Series B is kind of you're heading in a good direction. Series C is like, we've arrived. Good luck. And you know what? They might end up expanding into Cleveland or expanding into New York, Boston, and maybe they'll be successful. But man, this is the first time they've had these kind of layoffs. He said that it was like 7% of their workforce. To a company, 7% might not seem like a lot. Here's what does matter. It actively matters when you are trying to drive diehard subscribers to your channels and people who are sold this idea that they're going to get coverage for their teams that are otherwise ignored. You then go and lay off the people who cover those teams in a full-time capacity, or you go lay off some of the people who are part of building those channels and helping you build your company. When you fire those people, no. It's not going to work. They might expand. This dude might end up happy as pig and shit. Like, by the time it's all said and done, maybe 3 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, he sells his company for $100 million. They're in 25 different markets. A lot of the good equity that they had built up, a lot of the buy-in that they had built up with a lot of these audiences, some of that will crater after this. And by the way, the idea that like, oh, we're letting some people go in a full-time capacity, but they might stick around part-time. God bless those people if they really need the money that badly. But on principle, if they let you go, you should actively try to let them go. In fact, what I would recommend to those people, all of them that got laid off, and I'm assuming they've done this already, get together, try to spin off your own site. There will be people that are going to look to poach you either to legacy media outlets or blogs, but there might be somebody who's looking to expand into those markets who wants to have a good, strong following off Jump Street. And there are going to be people, hundreds, maybe thousands of followers of those people who will then go and they'll spend their money to support those people in an independent effort to try to get those people back on their feet. And I would encourage each and every one of you that watches this show, that goes back and listens to this in a podcast feed or whatever, if you can find all these people and they go off and they're trying to get themselves back on their feet, however long, whether that's the end of January or whenever they're, quote unquote, not financially impacted, go support their stuff. Help them get back on their feet. And if you have contacts in any of these markets, maybe try to help them out. But this is just like absolutely shitty stuff. It's like real life Ebenezer Scrooge stuff. The sad thing is there's no like cute little bunny waiting outside the window on Christmas morning to go get the prize turkey. I mentioned that because I took the family to go see Muppet Christmas Carol with the Philadelphia Orchestra a couple of nights ago, and it was awesome. Trying to find a little bit of positivity here before we leave this topic. I feel genuinely awful for all these people, and I hope that they land on their feet soon. Media is a really hard place to find a job. And that's why I said to you at the very start of this entire conversation, I am happy to note that I have left what used to be fun little rivalries in the past because I want all the people who got hired full-time to make something of it, to make something of themselves, be able to support their families and their loved ones. Media is hard to break into. It's a very hard place to keep a job. And I feel genuinely awful for these people that they seem to be sold the idea of they were part of something that was growing. They were seeing the public raising of VC money, and they probably thought that they were going to be set for a very long time. And a week before Christmas, they get told, you're let go. Here's some severance for apparently a month. In the awful announcing thing, he said that there are some that might have severance through the first quarter of next year, so by the end of March. But it's just not good. It's not a good look. I'm going to go over the comments really quick, and then I have to do like a rapid fire because I have to be out of here before 9:30. So we're going to try to get through as many of these comments as possible. I'm going to try to keep it on the ALLCITY stuff real quick, and then we'll get to some of the Philly sports stuff that I intended on getting to today. Ford says PHLY, and specifically the Devon Show. Devon Givens, who's great, stuck at 29,700 subscribers, has been for months. Even in the summer, no movement. I think that they're going to find that there is a certain cap on how many people are going to subscribe to a YouTube channel, continuously get notifications about each team's videos popping up. The thing that nobody wants to say out loud, that I've said out loud a few times, is that they are very clearly trying to invest big money in some bigger names in these markets now, and they're hoping that those people are able to carry things. In Philly, it was Gargano. If you look at the view numbers on his videos, they're not massive. When Snow the Goalie or the Press Row Show gets more views on YouTube than a guy who has 30-odd years, maybe more, of experience as a writer and a radio host in the city, that's not a good sign. Now, they have gone out and gotten Tim Legler. They have a really big NBA podcast that I think is around 25,000 subscribers. They had Baldy for a bit. I don't know if Baldy still works for them at all. He was doing the NFL show with Gargano. I think that's less than 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. Like, they've tried to go after names. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. They have Mark Stein, who apparently is a big part of the Dallas team and the Dallas scene and is obviously like a respected NBA guy. Like they're doing what The Athletic did now. I mean, like, except with daily video. And call it what I'm just here, here's your one drawback, okay? Not everybody who's a good writer is a good podcast host. And not every good podcast host is good or engaging on video. They're just not. They have these very rigid roles at that company. And I could go into further detail about this, but like my big takeaway, other than like absolutely not, we're not selling the podcast for that amount of money, all that, was why is a digital media company so stuck in beat role, second person who like also does some beat duties and does hosting duties, and that is it? Like, no. What ALLCITY should be doing? Yes, you should absolutely go and try to poach the biggest name on each beat. Fine. They should be going for the biggest podcasters and for the biggest YouTube personalities. And I'd actually say the biggest YouTube personalities more so than podcasters in those markets who know how to do short form content, because that's where they have, I don't know what has taken them so long. It looks like PHLY started to like kind of pick it up, but like it was a year where I was like, what the hell? And people in Philly media were like, how are they missing the boat on short form content? How are they missing the boat on XYZ? There are like 3 things that PHLY could do right now, and that I would assume that the other ALLCITY sites could do that would make their YouTube channel probably 2x or 3x. And they're not complicated. And I know that there's somebody who works at least locally who thinks I don't understand their business model from the outside. And I will encourage that person with, I think, about 200 or 300 followers on Twitter. That person should DM me. I could actually help that person. You could pay me an advisory fee. I could tell you exactly how to make your YouTube channel significantly bigger. Russ, why don't you do it for yourself? I'm not putting advertising money into this show. This is a grassroots effort. I make a very nice, healthy living doing what I do every day. If this were my full-time job, where I had to be YouTube creator to the max, I would employ a lot of these ideas. Thankfully for me, I am blessed to have the role that I have, and I'm blessed to just do this show for fun and get to talk sports and other media things with these wonderful people who subscribe to the channel. C-Max, as I said, from day one, ALLCITY would last a maximum 2 years. Business model and overreaching hiring, they did. I don't totally know all of what that was supposed to mean, but Jamie also says there's no way ALLCITY is generating revenue necessary to pay for these high-priced contracts. Listen, the Gargano contract, I believe, was made public knowledge. I'm not going to say it. There was a lot of money. There was a lot of money out there. I would say the ROI on that has not been good, but that's from an outside perspective. If it's brought them $500,000 worth of advertising spend, then okay. Gargano has a lot of sponsors, so maybe just on the surface, he's been able to bring in big sponsorship money for the entire network, and that's how they rationalize it. And to that end, cool. But if you're just going on basic YouTube numbers, that ain't it. Let's see. I'm going to try to fly through as much of this. Dersh says the Philly staff feel like WIP staff when they had to talk about the Flyers 10 years ago. Subdued, passive, disengaged, to agree. I don't want to dunk on any of the people, on any of the talent. I'm not doing a talent dunking today. Jamie over on YouTube says daily shows don't need to be an hour, 15 to 25 minutes on average, a 30 to 40 minute one for a deep dive. I agree. I think that's the way that it goes. I can tell you that like the engagement on this channel, while I'm always happy with the live engagement, and I think that that ultimately is really important for doing these shows, a lot of the clips that I do that are 8 to 10 minutes long, those videos will pop a much bigger number because people are looking for shorter content to engage with. Henry 3000 asked, did anyone from PHLY get laid off? Yes. Crossing Broad covered it. It was Renee and JP. So they gutted some of their Phillies coverage and definitely their Union coverage, which, again, not everybody out there cares about the Union. But the idea is that they were going to cover all the teams. Ford, in response to the CEO from before, says they were impacted financially. They know they need to find another job, and that it absolutely impacts and will do so quickly. The bills keep coming. January is right around the corner. 100% correct. Let's see. JH, sarcastically, silly Russ. Everyone knows people only have bills during the holidays, and afterwards they don't have any more obligations. Henry 3000, thanks for subscribing. That gets you an entry into the Drive to 500 subscribers, which has concluded. Monday, we're doing the drawing for the jersey. One randomly selected subscriber gets the jersey of their choice worth up to $175. So make sure you come back on Monday for that drawing. Jim says, pretty sure most of the people that get laid off are immediately modifying their spend, aka impacted financially. What an out-of-touch douche. Well, that's probably fair. Yeah. Not great. Okay. Andrew Henry, intern Andrew. He was happy with that segment. Good. There are a lot of comments here. I wish I could get to all of them. I really do have to get out of here shortly. But here's what. Oh, here we go. Jamie says we had a lot of Jamies in the chat today. Says they're doing live shows from Reading Terminal Market. Going down to check it out and get my roast pork from Dinex. Jamie, go support the talent. Like I said before, support the talent. But I wouldn't support the company. That's just me. All right, now I need to fly through the Philly sports. Oh boy. It's like a Philly sports 8 or 9 minutes. Good thing I started the show on time today. And I want to thank everybody for joining me on the media little road trip thing that we just did. Big, high level. We got very high level thoughts here. Oh boy. Okay. So 1, Sixers Arena got approved by City Council. That led to a massive demonstration. Now remember, leading up to the vote, I think it was last week, there was an organized group that tried to show the impact of traffic downtown, buses and the like, to try to show what a JAMO, as Bob Kelly would call it, is going to be created by a downtown arena. There were protesters yesterday. Kyle Pagan over at Crossing Broad tried to interview a lady to get her thoughts from the anti-arena sentiment, and then some dude jumped in between. This is just you have to be able to engage in a conversation. I don't think it's this is just part of, call me crazy, but you should be able to have a conversation with people that you agree with and you disagree with. And I'm going to just show you this really quick because Pagan does the best man on the street content in the city. Pagan's actually a guy that PHLY should have tried to go after. And if all city were smart, they would try to hire a guy like him. Good luck. And good luck finding somebody like him at every market. But Pagan goes out and he's trying to meet with these people. And this lady starts to talk. And then she notes that somebody's telling her not to. And then this person literally jumps in between, to stop the conversation, which is wild. Now, you have to be able to make your point. All right. I'm just very much of the belief that if you're going to go protest, you should be willing to talk. This lady was seemingly, at least initially, willing to talk. Pagan kind of pushed back on one thing, and then she kind of shut down this person. All right, whatever. So the Sixers Arena has been approved by City Council. Does that mean it's going to happen 100%? No, not necessarily. Things can hit a snag. There are always last-second negotiations. Could Comcast come back to Harris Blitzer Co. or whatever and say, hey, let's actually try to figure out a way to build a new arena down in the Navy Yard? And we'll split whatever, or we'll do. Is it possible? Could there be a final Hail Mary from Comcast and maybe include the Eagles and the Phillies to keep South Philly, keep the sports complex together, and maybe expand down to the Navy Yard? And could there be a master plan? Maybe. I think that what you're seeing here is that the Sixers Arena is going to go through. There are people who are very opposed to it, and there are people who are totally fine with it. I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. I'm not opposed to a downtown arena. I don't want to see people get displaced based on the very limited knowledge that I have, because I don't live in the city. I don't go to Market East. It sounds like a revitalization of that area, at least in the parts that are failing and that have been apparently, this lady was trying to say, were being sat on by a landlord or something and just weren't being built on. I view that as a positive. I like downtown arenas. I would love to see that lead to Philadelphia investing in their public transit and putting together a better infrastructure plan to allow for trains, subways, whatever, to get into 76 Place a lot easier. I would love that. I'm not opposed to the idea of a downtown arena. The execution and what's been proposed so far, I'm a little bit iffy on. We'll break this down in more detail at some point. So that's the Sixers thing. Henry 3000 says the sports complex in Philly works so fine. It's such a shame. They're building out. If nothing else, they are actively building out shopping and residential areas and everything in the complex, which I don't know how that's going to work because they are going to eat up a lot of parking spots. We'll break that down at some point. They have a whole plan. They have a plan. Jamie C over here. PHO, I make Kyle Pagan do an hour man on the street stream every day at the worst time imaginable. Just get that little shot in. Okay. Flyers last night. I mentioned this off the top of the show. 3-2 lead in the second period. Fell apart. Alexei Kolosov gives up a goal. Reaches for the puck. Misses. Kopitar puts it in. They eventually fall. Like, the wheels fell off massively in the third period. Flyers only get 2 shots on net in the third period. 7-3 loss. Looks horrific. The bigger issue is that they've now lost 3 straight games. They have a game on Saturday. We'll be down there doing the Press Row show. I believe it's Columbus on Saturday. And then I think do they have one more home game? December's been like a weird month in terms of like very few home games for the Flyers. They're in a little bit of a quandary. Cam York got benched in the third period a couple nights ago, got scratched last night. Defensively, they looked out of sorts. I have a lot of questions, but we all kind of know where I stand on Torts and his desire to like to jostle the lineup as much as he possibly can. I don't think that it's ultimately good for development. It's good for trying to chase down every point right now. If you want to have a really heated, passionate argument about if the Flyers are actually rebuilding or not, I'd encourage you to go over to the Snow the YouTube channel and check out the post-game show, because Ant and I got heated. But then we chilled out at the very end and everything was good. But we got very heated about rebuilding and what exactly is a successful rebuild, so I'd encourage you to go check that out. Last thing today, the Phillies finally answered the Mets. The Mets went out and they signed Juan Soto to a massive contract. And we all sat back and said, what are the Philadelphia Phillies going to do? John Middleton wants his trophy back. What are the Phillies going to do? They have to make a big splash. All of the big impact free agents pretty much gone. But we know that they're testing the trade market. There was the rumor that they were in on Kyle Tucker and that they were offering Nick Castellanos and Alec Boehm. We know that both of those names, Ranger Suarez's name has been thrown around. Phillies, baby, let's go. Let's go. Max Kepler. 1 year, $10 million. Okay. Had a bad 2024. Had 24 home runs in 2023. Is he better than Austin Hayes? Yes. Is he a better player overall than Brandon Marsh? Yeah. Is he a better player overall than Johan Rojas? Yes. So on this, like in a vacuum, is Max Kepler a better player than what the Phillies already had in the outfield in those spots? Yes. Is he the big impact move that people desperately wanted to see after the Juan Soto signing with the Mets? Not even close. Am I ready to give up on the Phillies offseason yet? No, but time's a ticking. It is. And every day that goes by that you don't see the Phillies actively engaged in trade rumors for big players, it feels like a running it back is coming. And I don't like it. And it's not good for the Phillies, and it's not good for their future. We'll get into more about the Phillies. I didn't even get to preview the Eagles and the Commanders. Here's the very short version. The Eagles, the Vikings, the Lions all want to win to remain atop the NFC. The Eagles should be able to beat the Commanders on Sunday. Commanders are still in contention for a playoff spot. You could kind of put your foot on their throat and kind of end what has been a nice season for them. Eagles need to have a good showing, keep pace, or maybe take sole possession of first place in the NFC. Get yourself in position to maybe, lock it up before the final week of the season and be able to rest your starters against the Giants. We'll get into all of the Philly teams, a lot more on Monday. Thank you for indulging me on the media conversation. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the Russ Joy channel on YouTube. Remember, the Russ Joy Show, we're doing the drawing on Monday. One randomly selected subscriber will win the jersey of their choice worth up to $175. So please make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you're a big podcast fan, this is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and wherever you get your podcasts. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will talk to all of you Monday morning at 8:30 here on the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. I'll talk to all of you on Monday.